For the majority, health is either physical or mental. What are the defining markers of true health?
So, how you perceive health. Health is balance. Again, spirituality is always, true spirituality is about balance. True health is about balance. So, and again, balance between which elements of our existence. So it depends on our awareness. Let's say if we're just aware of our physical dimension, then definitely we strive to attain this balance on the physical dimension. But most oftentimes we don't realize that our efforts maybe bring a certain relief or offer us an opportunity to kind of feel a little bit more energetic, balanced, and maybe motivated in life, but we still aren't really, we can't say that we're fully healthy. There's always something, maybe some issues there, even in people who are relatively young. And it's because true health comes from the balanced consciousness and the alignment of the body with this higher consciousness. So we all do possess consciousness and some limited awareness at some point. Not at some point, but we do possess a limited awareness. But this limited awareness also is distorted. So these distortions are stored in our limited awareness / consciousness, which translate into our body. And since we are imbalanced on a subtler level, which includes our, you may say, emotional and mental being, but again, this differentiation is just for our logical mind, because it's a subtle being which stores and procures all these waves. So, and then these waves translate through our glandular system into our physical being or physical body. The physical body is a fruit. Consciousness is the root. So if consciousness is distorted, imbalanced, corrupt, this will translate eventually into the condition of the body. So, and it will cause the process of aging. So the process of aging is caused by the distortions in consciousness that will, with time, keep on draining this body, exhausting it through the process of directing, kind of pulling consciousness outwards. And most of the people are not aware. That's where we can say they're having limited awareness. They don't notice how this pull actually takes place. They're not consciously aware of the process of how their consciousness is pulled out of their physical body. So if they were fully aware of their body and their consciousness would fully dwell in the body, they would feel peaceful, equanimous, grounded, you may say, rooted within. But because they empower everything else outside of the self, the consciousness keeps on being pulled outwards and keeps on giving energy to all these different elements of the projected reality or of the subtle projected reality, which are thoughts, concepts, ideas, emotional projections, desires, unfulfilled, some sort of paradigms within consciousness. So we can't speak about true health just because your parameters, according to the current medical science, are all right. You still keep on aging and draining yourself consciously. Even though everything else seems to be working, when there is a state of restlessness, anxiety, fluctuation of emotions, mood swings, some states where you are not really fully within yourself, you may say that you are imbalanced. Now, a prolonged state of imbalance causes a condition. This condition is a limitation. That's what we say, we're conditioned, we're limited, we're living as a limited self. That's why we have limited energy resources. The more we condition ourselves, the more limited are our energy resources. And so it means that our lifespan is short. If we want to prolong our lifespan, if we want to realize something, we need to reconnect, we need to restore the link with our higher being, which offers a different type of energy or a frequency that will or may be considered inexhaustible in comparison with our current condition. Although there are higher frequencies and much more powerful frequencies, but to our current condition, that is already a high enough frequency to maintain our, or to kind of refine our current conditional state, or refine our current limitations and distortions, so we can obtain longevity. But longevity is just longer life, but it doesn't mean that you completely stop the process of aging and decay, because in order for that to happen, one needs to go through a very, very hard process of transformation. In other words, that could be called purgation, spiritual and physical purgation. But it's not so much physical, it may be felt on a physical level, but it's more on an emotional level, where we literally purge out all this subtle information that is stored on a subtle level, but is kind of translated into our physical condition or body on a genetic level. So when we speak about genetic level, we are speaking about our inheritance, about the collective, about our lines, streams of consciousness from where we came, bloodlines, the inheritance through the physical vehicle. So we obtain this physical vehicle from a certain genetic line. Now this line is impure. All the lines at this point of time, at the end of the cycle of Kali Yuga, are, you may say, polluted or corrupt. So when we are talking, and that, I mean, corruption has led to the shortening of the lifespan, to different conditions which are called imbalances, diseases, and agonies. So now when you're speaking about conscious awakening, or in other words, spiritual awakening, or in other words, Kundalini awakening, we are talking about a very important and difficult process of conscious awakening to the very to the very primordial essence of ourselves. So, and this primordial essence is like it's somewhere imprinted on a, you can also find the reflection of this primordial essence in our physical body. And this level is called genetic level. Now, if you speak in terms of Ayurveda or Siddha medicine, which looks at the body from a different perspective, you are speaking about the very last two levels, or the last two dimensions, which are called Majja and Shukra, which are the marrow and the seed. So there's no such a thing as transformation without understanding these levels. And these levels are the levels, it's like the level of passing the genetic material further to the next generation, which carries the same seed of this collective stream of consciousness, which is called bloodline, or maybe something larger. Now, when you're trying to restore the original state, which is called the process of evolution, the restoration, coming back, evolving, it means you're going back to the roots. That's why Kundalini awakening has been known as the awakening of the root. But this root is still in the subtle. It's awakening to the root, to the primordial, to that level which we're not aware of at this point. We are not aware of that level, and that level is more of a collective level. It's a merged existence, kind of. That's why when people, if they have ever understood it and kind of reached closer to this level, they will understand how difficult this process of purgation of that genetic corruption, but not just genetic corruption, that's only one side, physical, but it's a collective corruption that has to be purged so that there is a transformation. So all that collective information, whether it's on an emotional, mental levels, doesn't matter, intellectual, ideological, and all this, it doesn't matter, just the different aspects of the subtle being. And so when the purgation happens, when consciousness starts seeing things in a different way, there's a shift in consciousness. It starts changing the matter eventually. It starts translating into the matter. It starts affecting cells. It starts affecting the body on a cellular level. Why? Because the shift is communicated through the glandular system, through the upper glands, and further through the system of lower glands into the body, the cells, the organs, and everything changes. That's why Kundalini awakening cannot be just understood just from an emotional aspect or point of view, or a mental or an intellectual. You can't divide the subtle existence. You may choose to look at it logically, but it doesn't reflect the reality. The reality is bizarre. If you have really experienced ever a true activation, and not only activation and awakening, but you went through a process which you cannot recognize when you are in it. You cannot understand why certain events fall into places or kind of turn out to be in a certain sequence, or certain things happen that are beyond your control. And it's not about even the events, it's about how you're perceiving yourself through these events. So through this process of awakening, you start experiencing life in a different way. But it's because you are still unaware of your consciousness being the creator. But it's not creating, actually. Your consciousness at that moment is not creating, it's purging. So when we experience Kundalini awakening, we are not having that pure creative direct emanation yet. That emanation is polluted, so distorted, and that's why what we're experiencing, distortions coming intensely out and reflecting back to us. And we go into agonies. We experience agonies because we are impure. So no one is free from corruption in this day and age. And so when they come to this process or to this possibility, they have to understand that it's not all about bliss. You may experience the ultimate reality, you may call it, or the reality of union. But your own imbalances will pull you out of that state of equanimity or equilibrium, or healthy state of being, you may say, and will show you all that which is conditional. And that's why this process is so difficult, because oftentimes people cannot relate the external events to their internal perception and to the process of spiritual awakening or refinement. And they see all of these as separate elements, which is a mistake. So when we go through the awakening process, at first we may experience a very, very blissful, equanimous being, but it doesn't last long because there's a lot of conditioning, a lot of limitation within consciousness. And this consciousness starts, you may say, stirring within. And eventually it just sees that the only way is purgation. So on the way to the restoration, it experiences tremendous push to purge. And it's not fully conscious for most of the people. They're still not conscious. They're not conscious of their baggage, their subconscious baggage, you may say, or in other words, distortions and corruption. But it seems like you can't stop it. It keeps on coming and coming and coming and coming out. That's where most of the people encounter difficulties. So they see that their body starts stagnating. All of a sudden, they start seeing that certain imbalances show up on the body. It could be temporary imbalances. It could be wounds which are now manifested all of a sudden as organ failures or some kind of issues in certain glands or organs. And this is a sign that consciousness is trying to show that despite the fact that you are trying so hard on a spiritual level, maybe you're learning a lot of information, spiritual information doesn't do anything. Because it's not the process of accumulation of information or logical assumptions. It's the process of purgation, which could be very scary for many people. It's the process of purgation. It's a process of liberation, liberating oneself from conditionings, from judgments, negative assumptions, some logical assumptions, conceptual assumptions, ideologies, and other forms of emotional, mental, intellectual corruption, physical corruption. So even at that moment, if you attempt to do everything supposedly right, you are leading a healthy lifestyle, you're eating healthily, you do everything right, you still cannot control these emerging emotions, emerging states of consciousness, which are indicating stale traumas, the traumas of your bloodlines, the corruption of that line, and so on and so forth. So at first, you will feel that it just concerns you. But when you realize, and if you have the proper guidance, you will realize that it is much beyond your limited self or individual being. You're purging a part of the collective. You are a part of the collective. So in that sense, you understand that your current condition of the consciousness defines the condition of the body. And even though you might not fall sick as everyone else, or your immunity is stronger, still, if there are conscious conditionings, the transformation process will not be completed. And not everyone can and has such an opportunity in one lifetime to complete this process. So, but yes, if we understand that the root of our health is consciousness, we flip the paradigm, we understand our body differently, or we start understanding our body, that the body is just a reflection of consciousness and its conditions. And the more we condition ourselves, the more we limit ourselves, the more we suffer. Our stale concepts, the fact that we hold on to limitations so strongly causes us indigestion, affects our digestive system, because we're so traumatized, victimized. Our disease number one is the disease of the digestive system or reproductive organs. So our emotions, our mental states, our ideas of life will shape the body, will cause it a condition, which will eventually define the lifespan of this body. So we cannot say that even if we have a relatively healthy body, that we're actually healthy, because it depends on from which standpoint you look at it. If you look from a higher consciousness perspective, it's not healthy, because the consciousness is distorted. So the process of draining is still going on, maybe slower, but it's still going on. The process of aging is still going on. Even the whole idea that we must, or people age, or people die, is a conditioning in itself. But the majority of people think and believe that there's no other way, that this is normal. And because they have that condition or conditioning, it reflects on their body. Because they worry about so many things, they cannot appreciate their existence in the body. Their consciousness is continuously outside the body, within the projected reality, scattered within the projected reality, feeding the projected reality. Even though they think that they're in the body, they're not conscious in the body. So the key to health is to being consciously in the body, retaining that awareness fully in the body. resting in the seat of consciousness, but fully aware of the body and its processes. That's the beginning. That's the precondition or foundation of yoga, which is the sense of equanimity, equilibrium, union, where consciousness supports the bodies fully in it, resting within itself, its vehicle, its fruit. It's like the seed. You don't find the seed outside the fruit. The seed supports the fruit. The root of the tree supports the life of the fruit. So if we're disconnected from our higher being, we don't support this body, we only drain it. That's why people decay, age. And when we are disconnected from the root, our immunity system is also limited. Our energetic shield is very easy to penetrate. Because bacteria and viruses and all the parasitic energies, they exist there, and their role is to decompose what's already in the beginning of decomposition. So what we call life is not real life. It's the beginning of decomposition, where the body starts sort of being a hub for those different bacteria and viruses from time to time. Through our lifestyle, we challenge our immunity system. So we are spiritually disconnected. It means that our shield, our energetic shield, is weak. So we can be prone to catch anything. But we don't catch. It's just that we don't have that powerful shield to resist negative energy on a subtle level. So on the physical body, it translates as some sort of viral infections or bacteria that we may catch as if we catch it from outside, but it's all from within. It happens on a collective level. We catch negative thoughts, other people's negative vibrations, emotions, we connect to them, and so our spiritual immunity and energetic immunity is undermined. And that's why it reflects on the lower physical immunity as well. So when we are born, from that moment on, the process of decaying is initiated, because well, when you're an infant, you're not yet decaying, but after a certain age, say after 7 years of age, you start, or maybe earlier at this point, you start losing that vitality. You start losing that immunity. You start disconnecting from your spiritual being. And so you're just on the mercy of someone else giving you food. So this food has a certain impact on the body. A lot of food is filled with toxins and toxic elements. So the body starts having difficulty processing it all, storing it somehow, or purging it. That requires extra energy. Our mind is scattered all over. Our mind is not rooted. So our consciousness is not really connected with a higher being. It doesn't receive extra energy. So it keeps on depleting itself. When it depletes itself, it lives off what it has. And so with time, or with aging, you may say, by the age of 25 about plus, the bodies start decaying faster and faster. And nowadays it happens already after the age of 15 because of the amount of sugar we consume and other toxic substances that the bodies have to deal with So from that point on, the body starts losing its vitality. It means it's losing its protective shield. So it becomes more and more prone to the process of decay, rotting alive. And so the body keeps on rotting until it just has no more vital energy to resist the negative flow, and it is consumed by the natural elements of this plane, which are bacteria and viruses, which are there to just decompose, to finish off the rotten matter. You leave anything on the table for like an apple or anything for more than 10 days and you'll see what happens. So the bacteria is or viruses are not there to hurt. Their function is to decompose, to sort of filter. And so that the matter is not kind of back to the earth. So the same happens with our bodies. If they had a powerful spiritual shield, they would not fall sick easily or get affected. But sickness is the result of the corruption. That's why this is called the age of the corruption. Sickness has become the condition of consciousness that manifested on the body. It is not normal to be sick in other times or through other cycles, because sickness is the result of the condition in consciousness, which manifests on a lower energetic sort of shield, which eventually is penetrated by negative energy, which are emotions and thoughts and ideas. And eventually it becomes easy for these microorganisms to just finish off the body that is already in the process of decay. So with older age, the immunity is lowering and lowering. It means that there is lesser and lesser protection there from consciousness. Consciousness is weakening, given into the corruption. And so the body is given into the process of decay and decomposition. And what people call death is just an agony of decomposition. That's why it's so painful. And this condition is only relevant for the lower cycle, you may say, within the evolutionary cycle, for the lower point of the cycle, like Kali Yuga, the late Dwapara Yuga, mostly Kali Yuga. So where the body kind of becomes very weak and fragile and frail kind of easily. In other yugas, the type of the body is very different. Everything is different. We can't even imagine. So this particular physical body in this current age is the result of corruption. If the corruption wasn't there, was less on a different level, on a subtler level, the body wouldn't even be that solid or small. It would be bigger because it would have more energy to grow. So all of these aspects have to be taken in account and understood, because we don't understand yugas, cycles, and stages within the cycle. We think that throughout the cycle, we are one and the same. We have the same density of body, we have the same perception of dimension and time and space. No, it all changes. That's why between yugas, there are the stages which are called pralayas, or transitory stages, where the system has to be reset for a different vibration, and everything has to be reset. At the end of each cycle, souls are recycled, refined, and depending on their vibration, they either continue into the next cycle or they go somewhere else. So this is the point. I'm not going now into details of the cycles, but I'm just giving you ideas sort of to understand that our idea of reality at this point of time is very limited. Hence, we have such limited bodies with limited capacities. In a different cycle, the body is different. The subtlety of the body is different. The size of the body is different. The lifespan is different. The perception is different. And we don't need to imagine, but we have to take it in account so we understand that when we speak about the health of consciousness, it's even kind of irrelevant because there is no such a thing as absolute health. Whatever you're experiencing in the body is the condition of your consciousness. So who defines the standard of health? Our medicine, our science, because it just created some parameters because you can still keep on going like this. So it's kind of a normality. No. So we don't know of health. The closer we are to balance, the deeper we perceive the unconditional being. And that unconditional being, you may say, is an absolute standard of health. For how long you can maintain that so that it actually allows you to transform your being and including your flesh.